community is not free. It's not a right. I think that a lot of people think that uh, that they just should belong somewhere. And I've had the ability to. I think if you want to create a community that lasts, it takes a lot of effort. This is big with the FMS. Like, oh, the FMS didn't predict injury, therefore the FMS is worthless. I would have I'm not a big fan of the FMS. I think, but like the FMS got studied, bro. Like the FMS got big enough where it got studied. You throw your whatever philosophy that you have under the bus, I bet the farm that it's probably not going to be predictive of injury risk. As far as like the ethical dilemma of being a lifelong learner, you're either there or you're not. Like, I think that if someone has to convince you that learning is important for you, that's a tough sell.
Welcome to the Upside Strength Podcast, the fitness and performance resource in Switzerland. Today, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Ben House, strength and conditioning coach and nutritionist. Hey, Ben, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
How's the weather in the jungle?
I'm not in Costa Rica. We flew back to North Carolina, so it's quite cold. I got a hooded sweatshirt on right now. It's about 0 degrees Celsius. I know you're in Europe. It's cold. We had some ice rain yesterday. It was a good time. Definitely not used to it.
When are you going back to Costa Rica?
Honestly, who knows, man? We'll see how everything snaps out this December and January, but hopefully soon. Hopefully we can get back to the tropics before winter starts. But I think if anything, the last 9 months have taught me not to have too many attachments to plans or some things that I want to happen because they might not happen. So just taking it day by day and just trying to have fun in the moments that we got.
Talk about the retreat center a little bit. When did you first decide that you were going to set that up, you were going to build that and do this in Costa Rica? How did the idea come to you?
Oh, man. So Flow Retreat Center, my wife and I, we met actually on a medical mission in Nicaragua. So we've always wanted to potentially live either part-time or full-time in a Spanish-speaking country. We honeymooned in Costa Rica. Loved it, loved the people, loved the pace of life. And so our goal was to be there when we were 35. We actually got there by the time we were 30. Took us 2 years to get functional, 3 years to really build the whole retreat center out. And the goal of the retreat center was to kind of helicopter people and plane them out of their current environment and see if we could put them in a new environment where, you're from a habit perspective, just environmentally designing the food, the atmosphere, the light and dark cycles, everything that we could to potentially help people to see what it would be like to live, with higher quality food, with more community, things that we feel are really pivotal to health, even outside of, nutrition and fitness. Yes. Like movement, training, muscle, eating real food. Those are all obviously important for longevity and health, but I think we don't put enough stock into social cohesion, social embeddedness, and just the ability to laugh, the ability to be outside. And I think people are really seeing the detriment of losing those things in our current COVID climate, and how much we really do need those. We're meant to, maybe not all the time, but we're meant to be in groups. And I think that unfortunately for most people, especially if you're single right now, you maybe feel a little bit disconnected and isolated, and that can be really, really tough.
Yeah, that's definitely an important part of, who we are as a species. So through the time that you've been able to run those retreats, what insight have you gained? What did you change your mind about compared to maybe before you started the retreats?
Community is not free. It's not a right. I think that a lot of people think that that they just should belong somewhere. And had the ability to, I think if you want to create a community that lasts, it takes a lot of effort on on the part of everyone, because if you think about human beings, we have ways to counter people like you'd call them free riders. So there's all these free rider solutions from a human psychological standpoint from tribes. And so don't be a free rider. Give back to the group, and know that like you need form people get mad about rules, but you need rules. If you have a community, you have to have some type of standards, you have to have some type of hierarchy, some type of moral code, so that the group functions. Otherwise it's just going to be chaos. And so I think that having a plan about those things from the start is really important. Like we have I guess from a strength and conditioning standpoint, like legacy, like which is the story of the All Blacks. Like they have their, don't be a dick, be the spearhead, things like that. So they have their 10 rules that they kind of demonstrate or live by. And so those are things. Our big four was be nice, perspective taker, seek first to understand the other. So try to create some space. Be empathetic, and then individualize. So always focus on context as much as possible, and then focus on shared attributes. But I think especially in social media, we kind of focus on our differences more than we focus on the things that we have in common. And so, like, if you love fitness, I love that you love fitness. I'm here. Let's see how we can do things better, rather than factioning out into and arguing about these potentially nuanced things that people in the industry don't even really care about.
You talked about, the free riders. Can you maybe, how would someone figure out that they are free riding, and how would you try and get out of it if you were?
I mean, do you pay? What do you bring to the community? Do you give more than you take? Those are questions that I would be asking in my head. And obviously if you're young and you don't have a lot of money, there's always other things that you can do, right? You can sweep the sheds, you can, paint the walls. Like there's ways that people can be involved that aren't necessarily monetarily committed. But I think that if you look at, and this kind of comes from Zen early in my life, a lot of these, I guess you would call them Zendos or Zen centers, are really, they run off one benefactor. So one person like pays for the whole thing, like a lot of nonprofits, like, and so I think make sure that you're paying your way and that you got some skin in the game. And if you're not willing to look at that, you probably already left the video. So pura vida. And if you're still listening, then you're probably all right. But that's just, I would look at, ask what does it cost for this thing to run? How much effort does it take for this to actually come to be in the world? Because everyone wants things for free, right? They want podcasts for free. They want books for free. They're searching. First thing they search is like PDF for free. And so what keeps the lights on to keep that thing an actual thing? This is something that we probably have to be really, really cognizant of right now, because if people don't have the money to keep the lights on, it's going bye-bye. And if you care about it and you can do something about it, then great. But, and this is obviously a very complex individual question. Like, if you're struggling to put food on the table right now, like, yeah, make the best decision for you and your family. But, it comes back to me, like needs versus wants. Like, where's your disposable income going? Is it going to consumerism? Is it going to, shirts and shoes? Do you have all those that you need? And then what else because where you put your money is energy in, energy out. And I think that's really important for our industry. And I try to do that as much as possible, buy things that people put out, stuff like that.
Is there an aspect of the retreats themselves that you had imagined a certain way and that turned out not to maybe function the way you had envisioned it, that you had to kind of recalibrate along the way to make some things work that you thought were going to work, but practically when you were, there with the people, with the community, trying to do the retreat that didn't quite function and you had to change?
The hardest thing, honestly, with running retreats was the entry day, like just getting people to the jungle. We didn't foresee the logistical, I'll say, nightmare of bringing 35 people from all over the world to a very, very remote location in the
Mm-hmm.
same day. Talking about flight delays, taxi cabs, like just a foreign language no one speaks, just people just getting lost, not knowing people just freaking out in the airport just because it's new, and that's completely understandable. Like it's a novel experience. Things are out of their control. And so those are the things but once we got people to the retreat center, I think we did. Well, I will say that my wife and I, to a fault, are really good at thinking into the future. And I probably got this way with construction, is like thinking of everything that can go wrong and trying to fix those problems before they happen. Is not the best. It's not the best mindset for living in the present moment, for sure. But it did help us at that aspect of our jobs. But yeah, that was the hardest part, is just physically getting people to the location. And it got easier with time. We set up systems and it got better. But once people were at the retreat center, we did food really well. We had enough structure where people didn't feel like they needed a vacation from vacation. But definitely, I think that we did those aspects quite well. I think we probably would have built it a little bit differently, but hindsight's 2020. There, it did function pretty well. And if we had to build it again, we'd probably make some tweaks so that people had. So that introverts, and we started to do this at Flow before COVID hit. We had places that were like silent areas. So like if you're not an extrovert, you kind of get drained if you're constantly surrounded by people. So we had these silent spaces where people could go and work, and talking wasn't necessarily allowed. And so that was something that we found was needed after a year of figuring out that, oh wow, there's people hiding in the rooms that don't want to actually talk to people after day 2. So that was fun.
From the insight you got, or the feedback you got from the different participants, what were the biggest shifts in their perspective that you were able to maybe bring to them through those retreats?
I think the importance of having people around you that care, people that share your value systems. You get addicted to that in those environments. And I'm not saying that you need 35 people around you all the time who share those value systems, but it's good. It's good to know those people exist. It's refreshing. And so that's, I think, the biggest thing that we were able to do is, hey, you can feel alone in fitness. Like if you're trying to think about nuance and context, and you don't really like selling stuff. And so feeling alone is never fun. And so I think a lot of people left the retreats like, man, it was a recharge of their batteries. Like, I'm not by my own. I care about, I really care about doing the right thing. I care about trying to find the truth. I know it's unattainable, but I want to try to, honor the research hierarchy and try to find these answers in the best way. And if we don't know, we don't know. And I'm not going to say that I do on the internet just for followers or just for sales. And so that can be a lonely place. And so I think just speaking from experience, and so just having events where people can come together and they can have a shared struggle, it's powerful. And I hope that my plans to do another one in 2021. I don't know where or when, but it'll probably be like just a flash event. Like, oh, things look good to go. Let's prep for 2 weeks. Everybody gets up on stage and presents on a topic, and let's get better together. And I'm sure we'll end up being able to do it towards the end of 2021. I hope.
Yeah, fingers crossed. You talked about staying in the moment. What strategies have you developed over time to be able to balance out that constant, like you said, trying to look into the future, plan things ahead, do the work so that you can, kind of reap the benefits down the road, but at the same time, not getting caught up in the hamster wheel all the time? How do you stay in the moment?
Yeah. So I'm lucky in that my father is he's a Zen Buddhist. He's ordained in a Zen school. It's a Chogi school. It's a Korean school of Zen. And so I took my vows when I was 19 years old. And I'm 34 now. So I've been practicing meditation for 14 years. Not that that amount of time is necessarily important. But I sit every day. And I think that practice is helpful in creating a gap. The other thing that I think is really, really helpful is unplugging. I think we don't really feel the tension and the ping pongness of the internet, and especially of our social media, just scrolling those feeds. We don't really feel how much that affects us until we get out of that. And if you can take some extended time away, like 2 to 3 days a week, or even just 24 hours away from picking up your phone and really just paying attention to the environment around you, it can be really, really helpful. Because if you're constantly thinking about something someone said or some type of argument on the internet, you're probably not in the present moment. And thinking about those things from a professional standpoint is important, but you don't want to be that person who's thinking about them, 24/7. And maybe a little bit of that in the beginning, we talk about like the passion of this field. I remember I just love training. I just love lifting. I love learning about these things. I love learning about nutrition. And so when I was in my early 20s, like you couldn't get me off. It was like I just had a bone and I was just gonna chew on it as much as possible. But over time you realize like, it's not gonna, 20, it's not the end of the world. I can unplug from this. I'm not gonna miss anything. So this fear of missing out, oh man. And so pay attention. And I think this is really, really also important for coaches too. Like whenever I'm consulting with someone, like that's the only thing I'm doing. It's literally like if someone pays for my time, they get 100% of my attention. I'm listening. I'm there. And I'm trying to be as present as possible to them and their situation. And so as coaches, I think that we can use technology, or technology can hinder us. And so if you never, just being there with another human is really, from a coaching standpoint, is potentially really, really powerful. And if you think about like coaches that are really good financially or business wise, they're probably really, really good at building relationships and communicating and connecting with other individuals. Or they're maybe not even the best programmer. They're not the best, biomechanics analyzer, but they're probably funny. They probably can hold the conversation. They look people in the eyes. They listen, actively listen to the other individual. And those are maybe the soft skills that we poo-poo in the fitness industry. But if you're asking why nobody cares about your velocity-based training techniques, and you got an empty gym, maybe look at, can you be a little bit more personable? But maybe not.
I want to come back on those relationships in a little bit. First of all, on that staying in the moment aspect of things, did you becoming a father change any of this? Did it accentuate it in any way?
Yeah, it made it way more important. Because you just watch. I have a. She's about to be 16 months old, a little daughter, and so our having a child definitely changed it. Like it feels time is the currency. It's time is everything, and so it really made me think about where I wanted to be, not necessarily where I am in the world, but where I am in my every moment of the day. Like, am I present with her? Am I attuned to her? Am I helping my family as much as her? Am I just, consuming nonsense on the internet? So it made me be more diligent and more protective of my time. And then also more, just more intentional with what I was doing throughout the day. And so I think a lot of times we get into picking up our phone or consuming some type of content just because we don't want to be bored. And I think that that's a scapegoat. Like there's probably something else that we might be able to do that might be more helpful. And if we can be more intentional with our time, and if we think about time as a finite resource, then we're potentially going to be more present. And so, yeah, she has made me think about how I interact with other individuals. I think all kids do that. How like legacies, things like that. Not that I'm trying to like change. I have any grandiose ideas that I'm going to necessarily change the world, but just what kind of strategies, what kind of thoughts do I leave others with when, and those are things that I feel are important. And she's definitely helped astronomically with those type of systems.
When you think of everything that you know about the human body, about psychology, about nutrition and training, what are the main things? Obviously, she's still little, but even then, what are the things from maybe your background, your education, that you're trying to bring to her through being her dad?
One thing and one thing only, and that is modeling the behavior. That's it. She doesn't know. She can't even talk. So it's like, what am I? The only thing I can do from a nutritional standpoint is screw her up. Like, there's no reason for me to talk about anything like sugar, nonsense, anything like that. If she wants to learn, we can look at it from an educational standpoint, but that's not helpful. I think that kids, they don't have the prefrontal cortex system that adults have. If there's a button, they're going to want to push it. There's a reason they cry for ice cream. And so I think the biggest thing that we can do is lead from the front, and words don't necessarily matter. Just like practice what you preach and be there. And I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm 100% like keeping screen time under 2 hours when, it's something that'll keep her from crying or keep her from yelling. It's easy. I'm not saying everybody has to be perfect, but do everything that you can to model the behavior that you want this other individual to have. And then don't be judgy about other people. It's easy. Like from a food perspective, from a fitness perspective, it's so easy just to be judgy of other people. Man, get off your high horse. We've all we've all made bad decisions. We've all been overworked, overstressed. Give somebody the benefit of the doubt and don't be a dick. And so I think if we want some nutrition, parenting, fitness advice, it's put your money where your mouth is and do everything you can to be present with this other child and be there for them and don't be weird.
When you said behavior and modeling the behavior, can you be a bit more specific? What are you trying to be around her? How are you trying to be, from whether it's a mood, whether it's how do you look at the world around you when you're talking to her about things? What are the specific things that you're doing to try and bring her the best that you can as a father?
We live on a farm, so we have 30 chickens. We have 9 ducks. She already ate a chicken we killed. She goes down almost every day, and it's getting cold now, but there's still carrots. So she goes in the garden, she picks a carrot, she eats something from the garden or the greenhouse every day. And so we walk around, we spend tons of time outside. She doesn't even care if it's cold. She just puts on her jacket and yells and runs around, and has a good time and sits down in puddles. And so I think those are the things that we can do. Like we're not inside on the TV eating ho-hos every day, all day. And not to say that someone might not need to happen for somebody in a certain situation. But these are opportunities that we've been able to create. These are things that we believe are important, and we're willing to sacrifice for those things. We have a community. We have my dad, her grandpa lives with us, and so she's seeing multiple generations in the same house, and she'll see death. She'll watch, like, that sounds real, but her grandpa's gonna die. What's her life like with him what's our final 15 to 20 years with that individual like. And so we're trying to create a community and a way for her to potentially see that cycle. That sounds deep and morbid maybe for some people, but that's, if you think about, there's a Zen saying like, what's the most beautiful thing in the world? It's a grandfather dying, a father dying, a son dying, or change that to a female version of that. And so that's essentially what we're trying to create, and just her being able to live in the present moment and eat some vegetables and run around and have fun with, and yell at ducks.
Why do you think that death is such a taboo subject in society at large? I guess because, like you said, depending on where you are in the world, what culture you're a part of, but death is very much put forward as something that is absolutely natural, which it is, and beautiful as well in some respects. So why do you think in our society today we're so afraid of talking about it and mentioning it, and just facing the fact that it is ultimately where we're all going? There is no way of escaping this, and so we might as well just get comfortable with this as soon as possible.
I mean, we've made up fairy tales about death for a long time. Human beings have been scared about death for since probably the beginning of time, and we've made up stories to potentially deal with that unknown. So I don't think this is a new phenomenon. We just have new ways of dealing with it. Back in the day, when someone couldn't walk, they just, for the betterment of the tribe, you probably left them there. And so just the tight-knit nature of human groups, and I think that it kind of was just part of it. And we don't necessarily need to get into the morals of how different groups and hunter-gatherer societies dealt with death. But I think from a Zen perspective, one of the things that you want to do is, in what we train, is you meditate on your disintegrating corpse. And so like, that's something that has haunted me since I was little. I've dreamt about my funeral over and over again. But that's also been helpful, because I thought I was going to die very early, and knock on wood, I don't really want to die. I want to stick around. But I think that we can't know. And so that unknown scares us. We always fear what we don't understand. And so why not just push that fear off? Why not just, sequester it in nursing homes? And so we hopefully you can square off the lifespan curve, and you can die fast, which should be everybody's goal. You don't want to go slowly for a lot of money and a lot of suffering. But old age, sickness, and death is coming for us all. And we don't like to see it. We don't like to talk about it, but eventually it's going to be forced upon you, and whether you like it or not. And so you can be ready, or you can be reactive. And as you might know from building a retreat center, I don't like to be reactive. I like to be somewhat prepared. And so I think that how you prepare is living in the present moment and doing everything you can to go through those times gracefully.
You mentioned Zen a couple times already. For those who are not aware, can you maybe talk about what it is? What is Zen philosophy? What does it entail? If you could kind of give it maybe a dumbed down version of it.
Yeah, Zen is a compendium of practices that allows you to potentially stay in the present moment. So Zazen being the main one, which would be sitting meditation. Buddhism is a religion. There's lots of different types of Buddhism, Indian, Chinese, Japanese. Zen itself is really the practice of sitting. And there's walking meditation, a good book if this is your first time hearing about meditation practice or Zen Buddhism. Zen Mind, Getter's Mind is a good one. It's Japanese based, so it's a little bit stricter. If you like rules, that might be the book for you. If you don't like rules, Thich Nhat Hanh's The Miracle of Mindfulness is also a good book for those just starting out. And eventually you'll probably want to go sit with other people. Books about Zen are not Zen. They're reading about Zen. Reading about Zen is not sitting. Reading about sitting is not sitting meditation. So eventually it's a lot like snatching or sprinting. You have to do the thing. And so those are Same thing with Zen. You can read about it. That's fun, but reading about it is not doing it.
I want to talk about coaches education with you a little bit here. So you mentioned relationships and coaching, and I feel like that's a topic that's been coming up more and more. Just from the podcast itself over the last 2 months, I've probably had a dozen guests actually bring that up as a conversation topic. How do you feel like there's any way in the current education system for coaches that this could be a part of the curriculum, or does it just have to be, no, you just have to learn it when you do it?
Yeah, I think you'd probably find these in business courses. That's where we would probably, if as strength fitness professionals, we love to put things in buckets. It's what we like to do. Everybody likes to reductionist thinking. So I think you would probably think about this on the business side or the soft skills side. And I think that it is learnable to a certain extent. Definitely self-awareness can help. The big how I learned it, how I learned to be able. I'm a natural super introverted person. Like I can go days. Like early in life when we didn't have, I would go days without talking. Like I would just research and train, and like if no one was around, like wouldn't talk for an entire day if my wife was gone. That didn't bother me. I could go weeks, but eventually that's why we had a retreat center, right? Like, even if you're an introvert, you probably like having people around every once in a while. And so there is a happy balance. But from a coaching perspective, I learned this through sales. So I sold stuff. Like I sold prepackaged, pre-portioned health meals, and I read how to win friends and influence people. OG Mandino's like the greatest salesman in the world. And these are really about like never eat alone. These abilities to chit chat, the ability to just talk with someone about themselves. Like that's what people like. They like to hear their name. They like to talk about themselves. And I think if you're a personal trainer, if you're a coach, learn to talk to people about themselves and learn to really listen and learn, like, also have the wherewithal. Like if you're telling a story, like how long is that story? Are they laughing? Is it funny? Like what's going on? Because if you waste 20 minutes of their session telling a story by yourself, like that's probably a waste of time. How can I, especially like in consults, I'm always thinking like, okay, how can I maneuver this conversation back to them? How can I just make a joke about myself, or how can I say something really, really quickly? And then how can I get this back to this person, their goals, what they want to do? And that, from an internal perspective, that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of effort. And so how do I recharge my batteries then? And so that's kind of this coach life balance. Because you are giving, when I do a consult, I'm giving, not only my time, but, a piece of myself to that other individual. And so there's a transaction there, and not just about money, but there's definitely, hopefully a reciprocal nature to that interaction. And I think that over time, talk about 20-minute conversations where people aren't listening. Over time, you get better and better at that. And so paying attention and listening to that other individual. And there's a ton of books that you can read. There's a ton of people that you can follow that probably accentuate and live these types of principles. But I gave you 3 books that are probably a good place to start. And you could also challenge yourself and like get a job in sales or something crazy, like something that if you're an introvert, you would never ever want to do. And I'm not saying you want to do it forever, but can you sell something? Can you talk to someone that, are you able to strike up a conversation? And I remember in college, like that was one of my, like as an introvert, I was like, I created this skill where I could create a conversation with damn near anybody at the bar. Not to say that I wanted to do that or that was fun, but at least I had that skill in my repertoire.
Mm-hmm. As an introvert yourself, does it still come with a big cost? The fact of, talking, presenting, coaching, are those still, energetically costly for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can turn it on quicker, but I'm pretty drained. If I do, if I do a 2-day seminar when I'm around people, yeah, I mean, I definitely need to, it depends on the environment. Sometimes they're uplifting, sometimes they're not. Depends on how much I have to speak, depends on how relaxed I am. So there's definitely nuance there. But yeah, ask my ask my wife if I'm drained from consults for sure. Like I don't want to do ever. I don't want to do more than, there's a break point for me, like 8 to 10 in a week. And, I'm just kind of grumpy. Like I don't want to be doing them anymore. So I think that how many sessions, like this is something, if you're a coach, like how many sessions in a day can you do without being a dick? Like for me, it was 6 to 8. Like when I was coaching people, like like if I ran 4 sessions in the morning and then I had, after that second session in the afternoon, I was just kind of over it. And so, and maybe for an extrovert, maybe it's 10, like it's going to be different for everybody, but where's that threshold where you just can't get excited. You can't turn it on, and you probably still have to be able to turn it on. Like that's the thing, like you still got to show up. But you can feel it when it's like more forced than usual.
Mm.
So yeah, and I like we get into the big 5, whatever psychological traits and introversion versus extroversion. These are probably like we like to put people in boxes, right? But
Mm.
you could be an introvert in certain situations and an introvert and an extrovert. And like, I hate small talk. I hate it. Like absolutely hate small talk. So if you put me in a table where, I don't know, a bunch of people that I don't have a lot of things in common with, like that's like going to be hell on earth for me. And like, I got a small
Mm.
talk about, but I can do it. And whereas you get me around a bunch of other individuals who we share passions. Yeah, I'm love to have dinner, love to talk. I don't know how much I want to talk about like nutrition principles, because then I feel like I'm presenting. But I'll shoot the shit all day with those types of individuals. The other thing is like, know your surroundings, right? Like probably asking me the importance of glycogen in between sets. That's not the best play. And so like just know the set and the setting.
Mm.
That's from psychedelics, but just of when you're asking these types of questions.
I like that set and setting reference there. If you had, besides the go get a sales job, if you had any advice for other introvert coaches, because obviously you're far from being the only one, from all your experience in presenting and coaching and consulting, what advice would you give to those coaches that maybe struggle with that, finding that balance with the energy that it takes them to do what they love doing?
Yeah, practice in a safe environment. Hire somebody. Hire a coach that does that. Hire somebody that's good at it. And we have the research-based content creation course that we put out hopefully every year, where people, we coach them through this process of creating a presentation. They practice, they go through it in a safe environment where it's okay to fail. And so if you want to be better at something, just like anything else, you gotta get positive. You got to get feedback. You got to, live in the fire. You got to try to encounter desirable difficulties, and you got to get better at it. And constructive feedback and being willing to improve, and you'll probably get better. And I was lucky in that I was forced into it. I was an algebra and biology teacher, and I realized like I did not want to teach algebra and biology to high school freshmen. It was not my hats off to everybody who does, but that was not my calling. And I've also realized like I did not want to be selling prepackaged, pre-portioned health meals. Like I didn't want to be in retail sales. Like these are things I realized by doing other things, but those experiences still help me. And I love teaching. I just don't want classroom management to be the thing that I have to deal with. Like, what are you drawing on your paper, bro? Like it's hopefully it's your homework and you're not drawing on your buddy's paper, 2 balls in the dick. So that was really the classroom management. I realized I really didn't like that,
Mm-hmm.
but content creation and, being able to teach and speak around people that care and want to get better. Like, man, nothing lights me on fire more than that.
Besides the human relationship side of what we do, what for you, in your mind, what is the other big missing piece in coaches education in 2020?
How to learn. like we want all these facts and these skills and these strategies, but how are you intaking information? What's your filters? Are you able to see your own biases? Do you know the research hierarchy? Like, what is the strength of this answer? What are the? Can you think circularly? Can you think about a problem outside of that problem? Can you disconfirm your own hypothesis? So I think those are. It's definitely a way harder road to travel. But that's what you learn that's what you learn in a graduate education, like master's or a PhD program.
Hmm.
Like you learn to think of all the disconfirming hypotheses. It's like you have this idea that a counter movement jump is a great way to auto regulate training. What's the evidence say? What's the potential negatives of that? Does it just take up time? How much time does it take of training? Is it worth the time that you're spending on this thing? Could you do it in a different way? And so everything has a cost. Everything has a potential. Like what's the reliability of this measure? What's the validity of this measure? Who would this measure potentially benefit? And so I think just thinking about things in a way more nuanced manner, and learning how to intake information and how to utilize that information in an ethical way and in a way that potentially has benefit is really potentially lacking for some folks who are maybe just guru hopping or just and I get it, man. The fastest way to potentially learn is to copy, and I did that definitely in the beginning. Like that's probably part of the process, but eventually you're going to learn that you probably want to think for yourself. And there's people out there that have your best interests at heart, and there's other people that are just selling you a cookie cutter way of thinking that maybe works, and maybe it's you can do this thing with every person that walks through the door and you'll have success with 60 to 70%, and then you'll blame the 30% who didn't have success. You'll blame that on them. Maybe there's some tool that can maybe you'll make a lot of money doing that, but you're probably going to be a myopic person that I don't really want to talk to. And that's fine too. But you might find people that love your same tool, and then you guys can come together and talk about how great your tool is and whatever, sip keto Kool-Aid, whatever Kool-Aid you want to sip. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. I just have no desire to be in that type of church. It's not my jam. But I understand that they exist, and I understand that that's not going anywhere.
The church part, it's funny. The next question I had written down was the science as the new religion in coaching. What's your take on that? Where are we on that spectrum? I find that in France, or let's say in the French-speaking part of Europe here, it's kind of a trend now and we were talking about it with my friend Kevin on his podcast this afternoon. It's kind of a trend now for people to just claim themselves to be evidence-based, as if the coaching process in itself, obviously if it's done properly, is evidence-based in a sense, but this over reliance on research as the only source of truth. What's your view on that perspective?
I would say first, the point of research is not to find the truth. The point of research is find the untruths. So if you're going about research to find the truth, that's probably, we need to talk about how you're intaking information and how you're forming your hypotheses. Because the point of science is not to find the truth. Like, yeah, we have theories, but everybody's trying to dismantle and chisel away at those theories. And so I think from an evidence-based side, I think that's great. I think that's a pendulum swing away from, Charles Poliquin said this, let's all do it. And so that's the appeal to authority. And I think the appeal to authority is very pervasive in fitness. This person said this, let's put this person on a pedestal. But you see the same thing in evidence-based fitness. This person said this, so therefore we do this. All right, and so if you're evidence-based, like, great. What does that term mean? Like, a lot of times we don't have evidence in the particular population that we're talking about. So you're extrapolating from other populations. Like, this is How many studies do we actually have in really trained individuals? Not many. There's not like there's and so when you see trained population in the literature, like what does that really mean? Is that person really trained? Like what are they squatting? What is their bench press? Do they even know what a clean is? Do they know what a snatch is? Like is this person really trained? Is this and so that's where I think like yeah, there's an art of coaching, right? And we have to honor that from a sports performance perspective. Like you think about something like basketball, something like something that's like not even a power related sport, like American football,
Hmm.
soccer. Like how much are you really changing Ronaldo? Like how much are you like? I went to UT Austin. Like I had the opportunity to work with UT Texas Longhorns basketball, and so one of the things that we always talked about was like Kevin Durant he couldn't bench press 185 pounds for the NFL Combine. Like you couldn't. He's like you're not paying me to bench press. Like you're paying me to shoot basketballs, and I'm really good at it. And so like how much are we going to be able to change performance? And I think that we can, especially in the beginning. And I'm not saying that we don't have, but what's our effect size on this individual for a performance-based sport, for something as crazy and as multifactorial, like injury risk? Like how hard is it to study injury risk, and how, especially like with contact, non-contact injuries, it's really hard. And the number one indicator of an injury is a prior injury, right? And so like this is big with the FMS. Like, oh, the FMS didn't predict injury, therefore the FMS is worthless. I'm not a big fan of the FMS. Like I think, but like the FMS got studied, bro. Like the FMS got big enough where it got studied. You throw your whatever philosophy that you have under the bus, I bet the farm that it's probably not going to be predictive of injury risk. And so like, be careful when you're throwing that under the bus, because your acronym might be next. And so that's not to say that these things aren't doing something. But if we're really talking about evidence-based fitness, you have to think about, all right, what is my effect size on this particular individual? What is my potential effect size on the individual I'm working with? Where is that a potential effect size? Like you think about an NFL linebacker, that dude's probably he's in the league. He's been in the league for 3 to 4 years. Does that person need to be stronger? Like, do they need to max? Like, do they need to clean more? The odds are probably no. Like you're probably going to be able to help them in the longevity of their career. Potentially, maybe. Now you think about a kid who's 15 years old, needs to gain some mass. Like there's tons of these kids out there. Can you help that? Yeah, that person needs to put on some muscle. Can you help that individual put on some muscle? Now, same scenario. Someone's not in the strength sport. Like where do they need to put on muscle? Because muscle, like an endurance sport, like do they need upper body hypertrophy if you're a cyclist? Probably not. You got to carry that muscle around, right? And so like what is the sport in question? Where can you potentially be of benefit, and where could you just create a mindset of fragility? Like there's a potential in being evidence-based where you create nocebos, placebos in everywhere. And so eventually, like if you're making athletes better, you're making athletes better. And if you're selling them some, like whatever it is, and you're making them worse because they think they're worse, you probably didn't help them out. And that's where you really get into like this idea, like is a bicep curl really going to help like a high school athlete on the field? If he thinks it is, if he gets more jacked and he feels better about himself, hell yeah, it might help. And so there's my tirade on that.
So how do you, in that context, when you're working with, you talked about those athletes that are, close to the top of their game and marginal gains in absolute strength metrics might not have any effect on their actual game on the field. How do you create buy-in from these athletes into a training program that, like you said, trying to get them to believe in what they do and try to not break them at the same time, but make them obviously feel and that like they are working hard, and obviously they are going to be working hard, but maybe not for the reasons that they think they are?
In that's going to be so individually contextual. Like I'm in a bad place really to answer that question because people pay me for my time. Like, so if they're coming to me, they're paying, so they're probably paying attention, right? If I didn't have that payment lever, and this honestly sometimes happens, but I'm consulting and I'm talking to a coach about an athlete. I'm really like, what do they value? What do they care about? How can I, like, if what are their expectations? Like, and then how can I meet those expectations? How can I, this is where you get on the behavior change spectrum. Like, where are they on that behavior change spectrum? Are they ready for change? Are they in that preparation stage? Are they ready for action? Or are they in that contemplative change stage where they're just like, they're just completely ambivalent, they don't care? And so if they're completely ambivalent and they don't care, like, is it just a paycheck? What, like, okay, great. Like, are you just showing up for work? Then I kind of have non-attachment. Now, are they in that preparation, that action stage where they really, they want to get something done? All right, cool. Let's have a decision. How much information do you need for you to get on board? Like, do you need to see wattage, like, on a power, like, is showing you a gym wear, so that you feel like you have a great training session if you don't murder yourself, right? Because we know, like, from an athlete perspective, you probably don't want big velocity drop-offs in season, right? And there's a reason that this technology is now everywhere, is because you can kind of train power, and we know that doesn't necessarily have the deleterious effects that a lot of these other type of, grinding reps in season seems like a bad idea. So you can kind of change, you can skew things based on the physiologic adaptations that you potentially want to drive and when, and that can be helpful.
Going back to the coach's education, I'm in the process of deciding to not pay for my credits this year and just make sure that my coach's insurance goes through essentially another certificate that I've gained along the way that is not from one of those big 4-letter associations that require you to do that every so often. Do you think that this is a viable model for continuing education, the paying for credits through the big associations that you got your initial accreditation through?
I mean, in the U.S., you just need a PT cert, like, for, I don't know, in Europe, you need to have some accreditation through some type of body. I'm just not familiar with like, we have the CSCS, but
right.
I don't know if you necessarily, I mean, you need, that's what you need to get in the job, but do you really need that if you know somebody? I don't know. So yeah, that's hard. That's such a huge question. Like, do we need to have a bar exam for strength and conditioning coaches? Probably, but who writes it? And so that's where we get in trouble.
I know Pat's been talking about this recently, and I thought it was since, I guess, to name the name, the NSCA's certification recertification is coming through this December. And so I'm sure there's a lot of coaches that are probably just, well, especially with this year and the lack of in-person seminars, that are kind of scrambling to try and find CEUs left and right to try and make up the points. To what extent should that be kind of a focus for a coach? Or should we find other means of, obviously continuing education is, in my opinion, far more important than the initial paper that you get, or diploma or whatever certificate to get into the job, like you said. But then how do we make sure that we continue to maybe withhold that quality standard for us as a profession and for our clients or athletes, etc.?
I think that's the goal of those bodies. I think we can hate on them as much, we can throw shade at them as much as we want, but I think that's the ultimate goal of those types of educational stories. They're all just stories. These are all just, shared stories that people believe in. And so, and then there's governing bodies, more shared stories on top of that, based on your country or your level. You gotta legally be able to do the thing that you want to do in the country or state that you want to do it in. So right. you gotta punch your card, whatever that means, or you gotta hire somebody that punches the card for you. As far as like the ethical dilemma of being a lifelong learner, you're either there or you're not. Like, I think that if we have to, if someone has to convince you that learning is important for you, ugh, we lost. That's a tough sell. I mean, if I, yeah, maybe, yeah, using like motivational interviewing tactics or something like that to get you to value education. Mm, that's tough, but I don't have necessarily a solution for that problem as an entire industry.
Mm.
I think we have a low barrier. We have a zero barrier of entry field, right? Like anybody can create an Instagram account and start doing dumbbell rows.
Yeah.
And so there's zero barrier of entry. And so we're reliant on the general public to filter out what's positive and what's negative. They're not going to do that very well. They're not going to filter out what's efficacious and not. They're going to see stories that look like them, before and after transformations, and they're going to make emotional decisions. And so now on the general fitness side, yeah, we probably need something out there that from a care harm perspective that keeps people from, but you're going to have pushback on that. On the S&C side, as a profession, I think that the NSCA and these governing bodies are trying to do the best that they can to maintain some type of status quo, maintain some type of check and balance, that there's quality content and quality people coming in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where we're at. If you care about yourself as a professional, I think you learn how to learn. And that's really because then you're reading science, you're collecting your own data, you're potentially able to use the scientific method to, not only do you have research-based practice, but you have practice-based research, and that you're able to potentially give back. And that's the goal. It's cyclical. Like, through Poliquin's name out, like things that Poliquin did, like we're studying cluster sets, we're studying a lot of these things, and so like he always got mad to like, oh, the research isn't there yet, I knew about this 50 years ago, whatever, bro. But how many times was that individual wrong? Like, yeah, biosig, come on, yo, that was terrible. And so you don't just get to cherry pick the times that you were right. And so, yeah, I don't know, that wasn't very eloquent, but it was something.
It was definitely something. You mentioned social media in there. That's another one I wanted to talk to you about. What's the good and bad of social media for coaches today in 2020?
The good is that you can potentially reach millions, billions of people. The bad is that there is billions of people talking at the same time. And there's an inundation of information, and not potentially good information, but also bad information. And so you now have to cut through the noise. And from a business perspective, if you're location agnostic, social media could be a really, really good tool.
Mm.
If you are location specific, I don't think it's very helpful. It's kind of like a new business card. Like, how many followers you have? Do you check a box for? It's an element of social proof.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you're using social media as a way to learn, or a way to, it's nothing more to me than entertainment, or a potential avenue to get people off that medium that is just, scrolling mindlessly. And so it's a tool. For me, it's a tool to connect and stay connected to individuals all over the world. Like, I follow people that I know. I watch them lift. I yell, yeah, throw some fire emojis at them. But other than that, it's not really. Every once in a while, somebody will, I'll pick up a study or something from social media.
Mm.
But it's not really a big part of my day-to-day. I try not to make it a big part of my day-to-day life. And so that's why I think Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism, is a good book to read on it, because he talks about having philosophies of why you're using this particular tool.
Mm.
Like, why are you in there? What are you doing? And that comes back to just being more intentional with your time. And when you don't have a lot of it, you probably don't want to be spending, those spare. The other thing is people do is they constantly pick up their phone. I think it's like 92% of people or something, like when this is in Adler's book, Irresistible. Whenever there's a dull moment, you can just watch people. Whenever there's a moment like a lull in a conversation, or they're waiting for something, what do? They just pick up their phone. It's like the second nature. And they just start consuming information. And so that, just think about back in the 90s or early 2000s, like, what did you do in those moments? Nothing. And so now you're just constantly just plugged into this feed. And that just does stuff to you. I think you just can't pay attention to things that are longer than 15 seconds after a while.
Obviously, the ratio of what it brings to you versus what it takes from you is not looking very good. But have you had any maybe memorable or noteworthy conversations, exchanged, realizations come through the medium of social media as a whole?
I mean, what I do doesn't exist without social media. Like, our retreat center doesn't exist without social media. So I'd be a hypocrite if I said that like social media was all bad. I think social media has the ability to bring people together that have shared values and shared belief systems. That can be great, and that can be terrible. Depends on which side of the boat you're on. If you love keto and you love CrossFit and you love Christ, it can bring those three together for you. And no judgment on any of those three, absolutely no judgment. But those belief structures, they exist. And so these things they have the power to bring people together. And they have the ability to connect us with people all over the world, for good or for bad. And so it's kind of like the stupid Spider-Man's quote, with great power comes great responsibility. And so that's where I think you want to create philosophies. And yeah, I think these tools can be really, really powerful in connecting with other individuals, which is their point. That's the point of social media but it is not a replacement for in-person content. I think that's where we are. We think about this is really happening in kids now, is you can say anything via text. Like, you lose so much in a text-based environment. We probably lose a ton even in this environment where I'm seeing your face, and there's so much non-auditory just stuff that people are intaking, like body language, things that are all subconscious, that we miss when we're in these text-based environments. And talk about like just highlight reels. Like, you're living this, you're watching other people's highlight reels. You're comparing your highlight reels to their highlight reels. And so the dullness of your everyday life just really just becomes apparent. And, people want plastic surgery to get their filter lips. So it's fucked up.
It is fucked up, to say the least. Do you feel like being able to read other people might become a scarce skill in the future with like the way things are going?
Yeah, I mean, every generation's been, they thought they were the best, and they can't, the generation after them is going to hell in a handbasket real quick. So we've been
all the way back to the Greek philosophers, and yeah.
who knows what life will look like for my daughter? I don't know. Not good or bad. I just have to be like, I don't want to be the old dude, with like this in my, still calling people on the phone. So I'd like to age gracefully. And this is something like, our world has never changed so fast. Like, you think about like 10 years ago, 2010, I kind of had a smartphone, kind of. I don't think I was printing out maps anymore, but like just 10 years. And so like just 10 years, think about what had happened. Whereas if you like 1750, you were probably doing the same job as your dad and your grandfather is in 1850. Like, maybe not. Maybe there was some movement. Maybe you got a different career. Definitely like 1200 BC to 1100 BC, you're probably doing the same thing. And so now, like, you're talking 10 years, your career might be gone. Boom, kaboom. So, and that's going to be tough. So how can you potentially maneuver yourself that you have skills that are warranted and wanted throughout this, and who knows what's going to happen, honestly. Like, it's just crazy. But I'd look at it don't be the Grinch. Like, good or bad, it probably, there's going to be downsides to everything. And it's probably like social media is not going anywhere. Like it's not going to take it away. It's how can we that's where you get the ethics of these things. How can we potentially use these things for benefit and negate the harm? And this is going to come up again and again. Like, you're going to put that in my eye. I don't know if everybody like I don't know where we're going. And so that's something. Yeah, and I'm not the best person to talk to. Like, I live on a farm in the middle of nowhere with cell phone service, so obviously I'm a little weird. But you kind of know where I stand on the futurism of our world. But good and bad, I would not be attached to the potential. It always being negative, because then you're just the person that is nostalgic for the past, and that person's kind of annoying.
Stay on the topic of technology, just going lateral a little bit, laterally. What do you think is the next step in training technology? We've got now, like you said, gym awares, we've got Moxies, portable VO2s, EMGs. Things are getting more and more accessible. We're able to use all those tools better and better on the field, in the gym, bringing all those informations that maybe weren't accessible to coaches before. What's the next step forward with all this?
Yeah, I think it's really the integration of all this information into something usable. And I think you're starting to see that in a lot of high-end teams like sports science. They have Catapult. They have all these data-driven systems, especially in the NBA, and they're able to potentially predict, when someone would get a load spike, how many minutes they should play, these type of things. And that's really, 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 really cool. And so that's, there's going to be, that's going to probably be good, probably be bad. And there's going to be people who do it well. But that's, I think, is like, first we have to make sure that the information that we're collecting is reliable. The second thing we have to do is like assess that it's actually measuring the thing that we wanted to measure. Then does that thing actually matter for what we want, for our output, for our dependent variable? And those are all questions that like you got an Oura ring. Like, is that really good for sleep quality, or are you just worrying about it? Like, I'm like, you got a Whoop band? Like, it has Whoop paid for that to, has it been cross-validated against polysomnography? Like, how good is it? I'll let you answer that question. Not very good. Could it give you total sleep time? How good is it for that? Yeah, probably pretty decent. Accelerometer-based stuff for total sleep time or time in bed. Yeah, it might be good. But not to say that stuff might get better. It might not get better, and it might get more reliable. It might get more valid. And then it might be a good metric. But we also have to take into account, like, if it was up to me, I would black everyone out to data. And I would have I don't want you to see it. Like, I don't want you to see if you're doing a muscle snatch for a peak velocity at the beginning of the session, I don't want you to see it. Like, because the placebo and the nocebo there is so huge. Like, you see a red light on Omega Wave, or you see a red light on HRV. Like, you can't tell me that's not going to affect people. Like, I would love for athletes just to be blacked out to all the data, and then they just do what they do, go crush. Or, hey, we're going to take this day. We're going to slow down a little bit. We're going to eat a little bit more food. We're going to try to get some sleep. Let's take our foot off the gas. And that's kind of all that's maybe all they see. So, because I think your nocebo placebo effects with this stuff are pretty high if they're seeing it. And that can be good in, like, we know athletes like seeing power, like the punching arcade game in the bars, like you seeing the wattage pop. Yeah, that's probably going to outperform just telling you, hey, train fast. Like, that's not, like, throw it through the ceiling, whatever, if you want to get an external cue. Just seeing those numbers can be really, really helpful. So knowing when to black people out to data, and knowing when for them to potentially see the data, and when seeing that data could be helpful, those are all cool aspects that I think are going to be disentangled over the next decade.
Got a few rapid fire questions to finish off here. Ben, first off, what are you currently fascinated about or trying to understand better?
Yeah, right now I'm reading a ton of Heinrich's work in which is really about weird psychology, weird being Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, and how we think, and how we think is super, super weird. And how and why we think the way that we do, and then how and why other people think that the way that they do. And so he's got a great, it's a heavy book. It's like 700 pages, The Weirdest People in the World. But it's definitely, and you have Jonathan Haidt, you have Robert Sapolsky, you have a lot of, psychologists, evolutionary biologists type people that have been talking about these things for a while. And I think that's something that has been, I think, especially on the nutrition side, yes, on the movement side, I think that we create camps, we create tribes around different acronyms and movement. But people do this a ton with food, and everyone has to eat. And so these stories that people have around nutrition can be really, really dangerous. And we're seeing a lot of those dangers, especially with, people just trying to figure shit out on their own. And they're going to find some simple story that they believe in via hearsay information. And why people do that is interesting to me.
But besides all the great book that you've referenced throughout this podcast, what's a book that's had a big impact on the way that you see and understand the world?
I think Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind, as much as he would agree that it's from 2012, I believe, and his Moral Foundations questionnaires been beat up in the realm of evolutionary biology and psychology, and in moral psychology is his niche within that field. I still think that it's a really good read, and that book has, especially right now in the United States, has been really helpful.
What's something you look forward to in 2021?
Oh man, seeing people, like being able to throw some weights around with some of my friends, for sure, and being able to travel, and that's really being able to go out to eat. And I think the same things that most people are being able to do normal stuff and being thankful for it, and not having to worry that I'm going to potentially kill somebody that I don't even know. So that would be helpful.
What's the first restaurant you're going to go to when you can?
Hopefully I'll be in Costa Rica. It'll be this place called Mono Congo, which is the best coffee shop in the world on the side of the Baru River.
Nice. Last one for you today. Something you wish to see more in the strength and conditioning, coaching, performance field?
More empathy. Just more empathy. More seeking to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and be a little bit less judgy of everyone else and why they're doing what they're doing. And if you are going to be judgy on the internet, maybe have a conflict. If you're using conflict to draw eyes, I get it. Yeah, whatever. Cool. Have a nice day. But if we can, especially during this time, if we can be a little bit more empathetic, a little less judgy, and just a little bit nicer and a little bit more thankful I'm just thankful that people want to train and like to lift.
Those are great closing words, man. I want to thank you a lot for your time today, Ben. Where can people find out more about you and what you do?
Instagram at drbenhouse, or broresearch.com is our URL where you can find all our courses and a lot of posts and a lot of articles on there as well.
I'll link those in the description. Thanks again for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me.